I'm guessing your lawyer background may have helped a little in this standardisation of these documents. Is this going to help attract investment? Because you've said in the past that Singapore relies too heavily on public investment.
Yeah, well, good guess on the lawyer background. But what happened really was, after attending a couple of these infrastructure conferences, this topic of lack of standardization of documents came up again and again, particularly from the banks. And what they were saying essentially was that with every project, you have to reinvent the documentation. That takes time, it takes costs, it makes it guesswork for people. So we thought, we're also a legal hub here, which we can surely do something, and I asked the team to work on it. So that's what we're doing. We're working with legal firms to come up with a standard template for financing. It has to be 50% because you do need to allow for some customization for the actual project, but we think that this would be a very helpful start.
Because I've read as well that you've said in the past sometimes it takes about 7 meetings to even get to that point of starting to talk about investment. What are some of the hard targets and goals that you have for Infrastructure Asia in 2020?
We haven't set a specific hard target or goal, but what we have is broad targets and broad goals. And it is this. It's really to make sure that we outreach to more of the countries in the region, getting our name out there and starting to get some projects online. So, for example, IA has been working with the New Yangon Development Company for the development of a new township in Yangon. That's coming along quite well. We're basically matching some of the service providers with the development company so that they can do the planning for the town. Recently, IA introduced the Silk Road Fund to Sabana Jurong. Sabana Jurong are master planners. They basically plan whole townships. Silk Road Fund, on the other hand, is looking for good projects to work with.
Yeah.
So what you're really doing is you're combining the expertise of both and hoping to generate infrastructure in the region.
Bloomberg News had an exclusive interview with the Indonesian President Joko Widodo saying basically that they are open to more foreign investment as well. This is obviously our neighbour and important trading partner. Do you see that as a positive sign?
Yes, indeed. His comments are actually reflective of needs in the region. There is a huge need for infrastructure, and as I've said in the past, the main challenges and obstacles are bankability, meaning that the project isn't structured in a way that the investor feels that they're going to get returns within a certain amount of time or the kind of profit margin that they were looking at. So it's very important to be able to structure the deal so that it's a win-win for the investor. They know when they're going to get their money back and what time frame, but the person who, or the project developer in the country also has a sense of how their debt repayment will go, what the revenue streams will be like, and what the likely outcomes are.
All of this infrastructure, though, whilst perhaps needed, is also a concern on the environmental impact. You've talked in the past about the gap in green financing as well. How as important is this to use that as a tool? Because we have something like $6 billion worth of green bonds in Singapore.
Indeed. I think that's hugely important because what drives infrastructure? It's the financing. You can't get it off the ground unless the money is there. So the people who are advancing the money or putting in the money are in a position to set out either terms, conditions, or certain requirements before the money is given. And this will help shape how the infrastructure is developed and how green it is. Obviously, we're very far from having common international standards for this, but I think we're at the point where we can have a good start. Singapore has been active in this space, and there is room to do much more.
I want to talk about the impact that we've seen globally, the US-China trade dispute. We had another piece of data out today with the IHS Market PMI suggesting perhaps Singapore did enter a technical recession last quarter. How concerned is the government about this global slowdown we're seeing and the impact to Singapore?
We're watching it very closely, but we're not new to difficult economic situations. We're not new to recessions. We don't think we've gone into a recession as yet, but we're keeping a very close eye on it. And as DPM Heng has said previously, if there is a need to and the government needs to step in with whatever assistance, then we will do so. But much depends on how the situation actually pans out.
So what could we expect perhaps from MAS in terms of trying to help buffer some of these external concerns?
It really depends on what exactly the situation is. So MAS is keeping an eye on it, and I don't want to preempt whatever they might do. But I think suffice to say that what we want to do is try and make sure that whatever it is, we grow as many sectors of our economy as we can. We try and find the places that it makes sense for us to go. But if we need some safety nets and buffers, then our agencies will have to step in.
And just finally, we are approaching the election. What should Singaporeans look for in this, I guess, new generation of leaders?
I think given the current economic climate and the world situation, what is needed in the next term of government is government that can provide stability, that can be strong government, but at the same time puts that strength for the benefit of the people, that grows the economy, focuses on jobs, and at the same time cares for the vulnerable, the disadvantaged, those who really need help. But also, and this is a very Singaporean thing, or at least it's a PAP government thing, never losing sight of the future and making sure that we build a city that's full of hope, not just for people, new infrastructure. The Prime Minister talked about that, the Great Southern Waterfront, T5 that will be coming up, all our plans for the port, which will be moving across to Tuas, basically a city for the future.